The origins of Halloween. Halloween has its roots in the ancient Celtic festival of Samhain, where people lit bonfires and wore costumes to ward off ghosts. Over time, it evolved into the Halloween we know and love today. By incorporating elements from Christian holidays like All Saints' Day and All Souls' Day, the evening before All Saints' Day was known as All Hallows' Eve, and later, Halloween. Samhain was an ancient Celtic festival. It marked the end of the harvest season and the beginning of winter. It was believed that during this time, the veil between the living and the dead was at its thinnest, allowing spirits to cross over into the human world. Samhain was essentially a festival for the dead. In fact, many of today's Halloween traditions, like costumes and bonfires, originated from Samhain rituals meant to protect against these wandering spirits. Though pumpkins are the iconic symbol of Halloween today, they weren't always the go-to for carving. The origins of the Halloween pumpkin didn't actually start as pumpkins. They were in fact carved turnips over in Ireland. Pumpkins became popular in the US because they were more abundant and easier to carve. The tradition of carving jack-o'-lanterns comes from an Irish myth about a man named Stingy Jack-o'-lantern, who tricked the devil and was cursed to wander the earth after his death. Stingy Jack-o'-lantern was doomed to roam the world between good and evil, with only an ember glowing inside of a hollowed turnip. People began carving faces into turnips and later pumpkins to scare away his wandering spirit. Trick-or-treating has its origins in the medieval practice of souling. Souling was a medieval Christian tradition and an early precursor to modern-day trick-or-treating. On these days, children and the poor would go door to door, offering prayers for the souls of the deceased in exchange for small cakes known as soul cakes. These soul cakes were often simple, spiced cakes marked with a cross, symbolizing a way to help souls find peace. A key aspect of this practice was the belief that the prayers from the living could help speed the journey of souls from purgatory to heaven. In return for the soul cakes, soulers would promise to pray for the family's deceased loved ones. Over time, the practice of souling became more secular, and the prayers for the dead faded, replaced by songs or performances. Children would dress up and entertain their neighbors in exchange for food or treats, evolving into what we now recognize as trick-or-treating. In the US, it became a popular Halloween activity in the early 20th century as a way for kids to get candy instead of pulling pranks. Before trick-or-treating became popular, Halloween was known for pranks and mischief, often called Mischief Night. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, young people would cause havoc, tipping over outhouses, soaping windows, and more, leading communities to encourage safer alternatives like trick-or-treating to keep kids out of trouble. The tradition of handing out candy started as a way to prevent mischief on Halloween night. By the 1950s, candy companies saw an opportunity and heavily marketed sweets as the go-to Halloween treat, turning it into a billion-dollar industry. Dressing up in costumes traces back to the Celtic festival of Samhain, where people disguised themselves as spirits to avoid being recognized by wandering ghosts. This custom evolved over time, and by the early 20th century, it became a fun tradition for kids and adults to dress up as anything and everything. Masks have always played a crucial role in Halloween traditions. Masks were originally worn during Samhain, the precursor to Halloween, not to become spirits but to protect the wearer by confusing any wandering ghosts. The belief was that by hiding one's face, the spirits would mistake you for one of their own, leaving you unharmed. As Halloween evolved, masks became a way to play with identity and mystery, which adds to the fun of Halloween. The tradition of decorating homes for Halloween stems from the ancient belief in spirits wandering the earth during Samhain. People would place items like carved turnips or gourds by their doors to ward off evil spirits. Over time, these protective symbols evolved into the more festive, spooky decorations we see today, like skeletons, ghosts, and cobwebs. Halloween parties became popular in the US in the early 20th century as a safer alternative to the mischievous activities associated with the holiday. By the 1920s, Halloween parties were common in both schools and homes. Oftentimes, these parties would feature activities like costume contests and bobbing for apples. Bobbing for apples originated as a British courting game during the Roman invasion of Britain, when apple trees were associated with Pomona, the Roman goddess of orchards and harvests. On Halloween, people would try to bite into apples floating in water, believing that the first to catch one would be the next to marry. The witching hour is traditionally thought to occur at midnight, when supernatural forces are at their strongest. The concept dates back to European folklore, where it was believed that witches, ghosts, and spirits were most active between 12 and 3 a.m., making it a prime time for magic and paranormal activity. Seances are an attempt to communicate with the spirit world and have long been associated with Halloween. During the rise of spiritualism in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, seances became a popular way for people to try and contact the dead, often using mediums who claim to channel spirits. These gatherings would happen in dark candlelit rooms around a table. The famous magician Harry Houdini and his wife Bess actually made a pact to try and communicate from beyond the grave. Houdini was well known at the time as a skeptic of spiritualism, debunking both mediums and seances. However, before his death in 1926, he promised Bess that if there was any way to communicate after death, he would send her a secret message from the other side. For 10 years following his death, Bess held a seance every Halloween in an attempt to reach him, but she never received the message. The idea of haunted houses grew from Halloween's connection to ghosts and spirits. In the 20th century, groups began creating haunted house attractions to give thrill seekers a chance to experience fear in a controlled setting. Today, haunted houses are a Halloween staple, drawing from ghost stories and horror traditions. Tombstones, also called gravestones, represent the graveyard, a symbol of Halloween's focus on death and the afterlife. Decorating with fake tombstones has become a popular way to give homes and yards a spooky, cemetery-like vibe. Tombstones can also be a reminder of the importance of keeping memories alive. They help to humanize the dead by including details like their name, age, and epitaph. Candles have been used for centuries to light the way for spirits during Halloween and other festivals related to the dead. The idea was that candles would be lit when the veil between the worlds was thin. This was to help guide the spirits towards the afterlife. Today they're often used in jack-o'-lanterns or as decorations for Halloween parties. Witches have been linked to Halloween through centuries of folklore. The fear of witches intensified during the witch hunts of the 16th and 17th centuries. Witches were believed to have supernatural powers, and Halloween's association with magic and the supernatural made them a fitting symbol. The connection between Halloween and ghosts goes back to Samhain, when it was believed that the veil between the living and the dead was thinnest. Many people believe spirits could cross over into the world of the living on this night, which is why ghosts became a major Halloween symbol. Originally used by farmers to protect crops, scarecrows are now a common Halloween decoration. They became linked to fall festivals and harvest time, thus embodying the transition to darker, colder days of winter. This uncanny symbol of fall, over time, became yet another tradition for Halloween. Black cats have long been associated with witchcraft and superstition. In medieval Europe, people believed witches could transform into black cats to sneak around unnoticed. In Celtic tradition, it was believed that people who committed bad deeds could be transformed into cats as punishment. Those cursed by black magic were often said to take the form of black cats, carrying misfortune with them. These beliefs and others helped shape the black cat into Halloween lore. Bats became associated with Halloween through the bonfires lit during Samhain. The fires attracted insects, which in turn attracted bats. Their nocturnal habits and ties to the dark made them a spooky symbol of Halloween. The Ouija board, also known as a talking board, was created in 1890 as a parlor game, but its connection to the spirit world quickly took center stage. Originally marketed as a fun way to communicate with the dead, it became a staple of seances during the spiritualist movement. What makes it so creepy is how countless people have reported strange occurrences after using it. Voices, moving objects, and even strange apparitions. Skeptics argue that it's just the ideomotor effect, the subconscious mind moving the planchette, but others are convinced that it's real. Stories of users experiencing hauntings, possessions, and paranormal activity after just one session have persisted for over a century. Whether you believe it or not, the Ouija board's strange history has made it one of the most feared objects in pop culture. And as Halloween marks the time when the veil between the living and the dead is believed to be thinnest, it's no surprise that many turn to the Ouija board on this night to attempt communication with ghosts. So who really knows? Maybe this year you'll create a Halloween tradition of your own that'll live on for centuries. Until next time, never stop searching.